You are listening to the Sabre Coach Kate podcast, where I highlight the great thinkers, athletes, and coaches in the dynamic sport of Olympic fencing.
Guard. Boy, howdy.
This is the Sabre Coach Kate podcast, episode 1. I am so happy to be talking with Ariana Klinkov today. Ariana has worn multiple hats over the years, including competitive fencer, international referee, fencing coach, mom, wife, fencing club owner, paramedic, and CrossFitter. Thank you so much for joining me today, Ariana. I really appreciate you being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's fun to talk about all the craziness of fencing with somebody.
And I'm sure you got plenty of crazy stories that you'll be able to, well, some of which you'll be able to share with us.
Yes, I'll keep some of them to myself.
Okay. Well, let's start first with your childhood. Tell me where you come from.
Well, my family, we started in the New York area. I was actually born at a hospital called Flower Fifth Avenue, which no longer exists. Then my mother and now stepfather moved out to New Mexico. So I lived in a number of places in very rural New Mexico while spending summers and Christmases with my father in Manhattan. So it was a very big difference in my summer and winter living.
Yeah, I'm sure.
We lived at one point near one of the largest wilderness areas in the country next to Alaska, and I had a horse that I would routinely ride out, with the warning from my mother, keep an eye out for mountain lion. I once had my horse throw me on the ground because of a rattlesnake, and I then proceeded to walk the 10 miles home with him leading me back 50 feet at a time while grazing and then running away from me so I couldn't get on his back. So yeah, that was my childhood. And then I would magically be in Manhattan in the summer, which was really amazing and fun because Manhattan is obviously lively and has a completely different set of things that you can do. So
Absolutely. What a contrast.
Yeah.
Wow. What was your family like when you were growing up?
My mother is an artist and ran different galleries and was painting a lot as I was a child. My stepfather was a musician and was, often playing at night at clubs. And then my Manhattan family, both my father and my stepmom worked in psychiatric social work. And in fact, when I was very young, my dad was transitioning from being an engineer to going into social work. So he was actually in school. So a lot of interesting different personalities.
And activity. Mm-hmm. And lots of smart people. All right. Well, what were your favorites back then? Like, who was your favorite movie star, or what was your favorite school subject? What did you like to eat?
I was a huge reader. I would sit around and read everything from Star Wars to Gone with the Wind. I remember sitting down and thinking I was going to read Gone with the Wind in one day, and I did.
Oh my!
Yeah,
really?
1,051 pages.
Oh
I
my
remember
gosh.
to this day. Yeah. So I absolutely loved reading. The areas actually that we lived in New Mexico, in large part, had no television.
Yeah.
And we had no satellite, so it was reading and radio, and going out and playing with the horses in the back. So
and rattlesnakes.
Right, and rattlesnakes, yes. So I read so much, and reading Fred Saberhagen's Vampire Chronicles and Gone with the Wind, and just tons of fantasy and stuff like that, and all while riding and going out and hiking in the woods. So that was great for me. And then in complete contrast, I'd spend my summers going to Camp Yomi, which was a Jewish day camp in New York City, and swimming and doing crafts. And so, I loved all that stuff, and I just loved the reading. I don't think I ever had one favorite movie star, one favorite person, but I just loved those authors and those characters and those books. So.
Wow. What got you into fencing?
Okay, so I met David Blake while working in an ambulance company in Massachusetts. I had gone to Massachusetts to go to paramedic school because the paramedic school I was enrolled in New York suddenly didn't exist.
Oh.
Yeah. So I drove to Manhattan, took the test to enroll in paramedic school, waited till I got the results, rented an apartment, got my stuff, ran back. So I was working in an ambulance company, and I met David Blake, who had fenced once in his life and was not fencing, and I begged him to take me up to fencing. And he took me up to Peabody, where Joe Paczynski was coaching. And the minute I met Joe Paczynski and the minute I started fencing, I was completely hooked. I absolutely loved all of the learning and the competing. I was taking lessons from him both in épée and sabre. And he was such a dynamic, excited guy, so that was really fun. And that was it. We started, I got Dave back into fencing. And I started fencing, and I was fencing instantly, like 3 nights a week for 3 hours and taking lessons. So
wow, I didn't know that you didn't start when you were younger. I didn't realize that it was when you were an adult.
Yeah, I actually picked up fencing right after college. After having done other sports, but I absolutely loved fencing. It really suited me because I could be really smart, and I didn't have to just rely on athletic ability, which I'm a little short on. I'm an okay athlete. I'm a hardworking athlete, but I'm not by any stretch a gifted athlete. So being able to be really smart and put that to work in a sport was perfect for me.
Yeah. That. Let's go back just for a moment. And how did you choose to become a paramedic?
This is great. The college I went to in upstate New York, I went to SUNY Binghamton, was one of the only completely student-run ambulance companies in the country. And while I was taking classes, I met some people involved in that community, and it was really an amazing community. It's people who were friends and went out together and did stuff together. So I got my EMT while in college and started working on the volunteer ambulance. And they were really, and you learned to dispatch, and you had to go through some incredible testing and practical exams and riding time to learn to be what's called a crew chief there. And so I really began to love the ambulance culture and the work and the learning. Diagnostics is fascinating to me. So when I graduated from SUNY Binghamton, and I was, wanted to wait a little before deciding on maybe going to graduate school later for either history or biology, both of which I had studied in college, I decided to become a paramedic. And as it would turn out, it was very helpful being a paramedic because the 2 24-hour shift a week schedule allowed me to train in fencing. So it was very serendipitous.
Yeah, exactly. And you still are a paramedic even today.
Yes, I still try to, I was raised by people who believe you should always have a backup plan, and I think that having a medical license is a great thing. There will always be people going to the hospital, so I try to work at least once a week on the ambulance and keep up the continuing education to keep my license. So.
Well, and it doesn't hurt with your coaching either.
Exactly.
To be able to
yes, I actually had a student have a full-on heart attack at practice once, which I recognized instantly because of being a paramedic. I called the local ambulance company, which was the company I worked for at the time, and I'm like, this guy's having a huge heart attack. Please send the paramedics. And sure enough, he had a bypass, So.
Wow. Yeah, we just had somebody at our club that just experienced that. Not at the club, but...
Yeah. It can happen, so...
Yeah. Well, let's go back to fencing. Tell me more about your first coach. You said that he was really dynamic. That he was a lot of fun to be with. Do you think that he was the reason that you liked fencing so much, or would you have liked it anyway?
I don't know about that, because I certainly loved the community of fencing. I liked having something to do. I always like having a goal. So fencing was great because it gave me something that was really measurable. You could see your progress in fencing. But certainly Joe was such an amazing person. Here's someone who taught himself how to coach fencing, never having fenced, produced all of these amazing Olympians and champions from this self-taught basis. And, he loved it was obvious how much he loved it. Every lesson he gave, he put his every effort into. I mean, he must have been in his 70s when I started with him. Oh. And he was, just dynamic and active and amazing. So, I think that it's hard not to like what you're doing when your coach clearly loves it so much. So I think that he was never just going through the motions in any lesson or in any practice. and that was very clear. So certainly I think he had something to do with it, but it was also the community as well.
Well, and how long were you with him?
I was with Joe from late 1994 through probably 2000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, I was taking lessons with him all along, even as I started to branch out to go to more saber specialists to him. I sort of kept working with him.
Okay, well, tell me about your early years of fencing. Like, how did it go for you from the beginning?
You know, it was really interesting because I started fencing and I threw myself into it, as I do many of the things I'm interested in.
Yeah, you're a pretty passionate person.
Full on, So 3 or 4 days a week training, and I started with competitions right away, and
Not
going to
everybody is comfortable with that.
Yeah, and going right into clubs, and I was doing épée too, and the people in épée are. They've been doing it a long time in the women's events. So
right.
I wasn't going to be great, but I did okay. I beat people I didn't expect to, and I tried really hard, and I didn't expect a lot. I had fun. And then I picked up sabre because in our area at the time, Sarah Solomon and Chris Becker and some of the pioneers in sabre were fencing, and they saw me at practice and invited me to fence a little with them. So in addition to doing épée, I was now, playing around with sabre and started to take lessons with Joe. And so, it was really fun and dynamic environment there. So it was great to train and to fence and to go to competitions, and everybody was really encouraging. So that was quite nice.
It's great that you had that from the get-go. I think most clubs in general are like that anyway, but it's good to hear that there was such encouragement for you from the very beginning.
Yeah, and at that time, in the Boston area, people really did train at multiple clubs. So like Sarah was training at MIT with Yara Konyush, but would show up at Boston Fencing Club to bout. The nights that there were sabre, everyone would show up from the club. So I was coming from Joe Paczynski's club, and then there were the Boston Fencing Club fencers, and then the people from MIT would come, and then we'd go to MIT sometimes. So there really was a pretty free bouting environment there, and people really did train at different clubs so that you could bring strength to each practice, and I think that was really nice.
Well, and plus, I mean, it's the same environment that you'd have at a competition.
Exactly.
Because you're fencing different people all the time. It's really hard when you're used to just a couple of people, and you have to go out there, and now what do I do?
Yeah, exactly. So.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that you were fencing sabre with the pioneers, but I've always considered you one of the pioneers as well. Tell me about the sabre scene for women at the time.
Yeah, sabre was really in its fight. So the women who had been fencing sabre even before I got there were fighting to give sabre legitimacy within U.S. fencing. At the time, there was only Division II and Division III national events, and the president of fencing at the time had put some parameters on women's sabre achieving Division I status. They had to have, I think, 86 fencers and a certain number of Bs, Cs, and Ds. There were no As. They didn't award them at the time.
Well, you wouldn't have had a tournament strong enough.
Exactly. Yeah. So we had to have a certain to gain a certain number of Bs, Cs, Ds. You were getting these at the Division II tournaments, so everyone was trying to get their Bs, and so. These people were really dedicated to sabre and really dedicated to gaining numbers and to getting people out there competing and proving to U.S. fencing that women's sabre was deserved a spot at the table, basically. And looking, ahead, that they did that was an incredibly important foundation because we were a little bit ahead of the game when it came to women's sabre. Over the Europeans. So I think that gave us some momentum when we went into the international circuit to have some really great things happen, which it did.
Well, and part of that success can be summed up with the National Women's Sabre team that you were a part of. So tell me what it was like to prepare for the 1995 season.
You use that word prepare. What is this word you speak of? All right, so this is actually a great story, and it's a story about how sometimes, and especially at that time when U.S. fencing was a little smaller, some flexibility in moments can really changed the course of things. I actually recently talked to Carla May about this, and she didn't remember, but I reminded her. In 1995, it was really my first year of fencing, and we went to the qualifiers that year for nationals. It was basically the Division 2-3 qualifier, and they didn't have enough women to complete the event in sabre. So Chris and Sarah walked over and said, please, fence in the event. So I did. And I had fenced sabre very few times at that point. So we fenced in the event, and I managed to qualify. The division told me I qualified. Wonderful. I sent my entry in. We decided to have a team. That was myself, Chris, and Sarah. And we, started fencing together a little bit, and I was taking lessons from Joe, and we went to St. Louis for nationals. And it was in the ballroom. They had the chandeliers. It was in the, yeah. And I go to my first event, which was the Division 2 Women's Sabre, which had like 80 competitors. It was pretty
That's
close
pretty
to
big.
it was pretty good. And they proceed to tell me I'm not actually in the event because I didn't qualify.
But they told you.
Right, exactly. So I had sent in my entry, I had sent in my money, but U.S. Fencing had never told me I wasn't qualified. And so I flew all the way out there, right? Well, Carla May actually decided to let me fence anyway. She made the executive decision that having spent the money and not having been told I shouldn't be there,
right,
that she would allow me to fence. And it was really great because I ended up coming in 21st.
Wow, that's
in that
really
event.
good.
I had a really good day. I lost to Sue Bartholomew, who had been fencing sabre far longer than me, who I absolutely deserved to lose to. But she was great and encouraging, even as I fenced her. She was another person who really pioneered in the sport and was amazing. And then we fenced, this team event. And so I don't know if I was prepared, but I certainly had tried very hard, and I was the least experienced of the women on that team. So, but we did train together and we did fence together. So,
and how many teams were in that event? Do you remember?
I don't, but I think it was like 12 teams. I think it was actually reasonably hefty. It was a pretty great day.
Yeah, I'd say gold medal in that event.
Yeah, we only focus the entire day was, oh my God, these other two women are really good, and I'm not letting them down.
Yeah.
I won, I think, all of my matches or close to it because I was completely terrified of letting the other people down. It was, it's probably why I'm a good team fencer. I will definitely out-fence myself in team because I have no interest in being the person who lost it for everyone else. It's awful.
It's more like, fear of shame.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I'm like, oh no, I am not getting hit because they would be mortified,
Yeah. All right. And you were also part of the 1998 and 2003 teams that won silver. And so by this point, you'd been fencing for a while longer.
Yeah.
And I'm sure at that point, there were more women involved in saber fencing too. So what did it take to be able to achieve that high level as compared to that first one?
Yeah, by 1998, we were all training. It was the year we would have started to travel internationally. And there was a lot of strong young women coming up from real saber coach backgrounds,
Right.
And we were training all the time. So, it was, a great competitive environment, and a silver medal at that event was, a real accomplishment because
not that the gold medal is anything.
No,
to sneer
absolutely.
at, but
believe me, the gold medal was incredible because I shouldn't have been able to get touches on any of the people I fenced. So I was very proud of that. But by 1998, all of us knew what we were doing. So right. I think that was it's really great. And 2003 was actually after I'd retired, and it was with my students. So once again, I was in the wonderful position of trying not to mess it up for them
and embarrass yourself.
They were really good. Yeah, exactly. But we did really well, actually, and the team we lost to was extremely strong and packed with many active international fencers at the time, so that was really great. But the people I fenced that event with were students of mine who I was giving lessons to every day and who were training really actively to fence internationally.
Yeah.
So
and you really knew each other too.
Yeah, exactly. So that was that was really fun actually to compete with them.
Well, let me ask you about that team camaraderie. Does it take training together to have a good team, or can you just take good people from individual clubs and put them together and have magic happen?
I think both of those things are true. I think for teams that are going to be competing a lot together, you have to train together, because starting to know who needs to be where, when, how to put things together in the best possible way. But on the other front, at team events that are random through the country, getting people who do compete together and who know each other well into groups together can be huge amounts of fun. And I think there's magic there too. But I think they're different purposes. I think you have the teams that are meant to be qualifying us for the Olympics, and if they don't train together, I think that's a huge mistake.
Right.
Because they have to know how to interact with one another. They have to know when an elite athlete needs support from a teammate and when they need people to be quiet, when they need direct advice, when they just need cheering on, what to say to them in between tough bouts. That type of dynamic at the elite levels is crucial.
Yeah, I find that during our team leagues, there are certain phrases that people say that if they say them, then I don't fence well. all the
Exactly.
time.
Yep.
And so to me, you'd have to really know each other in order to not suddenly mess them up.
Right, exactly.
By mistake.
Right.
You're trying to be encouraging, but it just totally destroys whatever they've got going on. So, as part of the team, what can an individual fencer do to personally help that team be successful?
I think that team members know when you're giving it your all out there. And I think that's crucial. I think you have to walk into the room for a team event excited to be fencing team. And you have to know it is for the group. I think that's why there are certain people really recognized for being great team fencers, because they are the people who will throw everything out on the strip because they're fencing team. I think there is a difference between being a great individual fencer and being a great team fencer. And sometimes that's an evolution for athletes. Sometimes there are athletes that are just born to be that, and sometimes people are more individual competitors and they come to learn that team dynamic. But I think it's twofold. I think people really respect when you are fighting your heart out for the team, and I think people really respect when you take the time to listen to their needs. When people know you have taken the time to listen to what they want to hear, what kind of supports they need.
Well, you don't really compete much anymore. Every now and again, you'll come for a team event. You and I have fenced together as well, and I've really enjoyed that. Or we'll have a bout or two when you come for camps and things. Is there anything that you miss about competition? Or is that all behind you now?
Well, look, I am someone who always likes training for a goal. However, I couldn't fence without coaching and training. And, where I'm now coaching a lot, and in different venues, I don't really have the time to train that way. So I think I would find it frustrating to get on strip in any consistent way without stuff to practice. One of the great joys for me about fencing was learning something new from my coach and then figuring out how to put that together on strip over the next days, weeks, or months before a competition. And so if I were going out without that information, without that stuff to practice, I think I wouldn't enjoy it as much as I did in the past. And so that's sort of why I've not gone out to compete again. I also retired in part because of some repetitive stress injuries that were very specific to fencing, and I think that I would meet them very quickly if I started fencing again.
Well, and you're an all in or nothing kind of person, and since you devote so much time to coaching and you couldn't go all in for your training,
Exactly.
then
And that's
I think
exactly
it would just be too frustrating.
Yeah, I just wouldn't, and again, that joy of learning is such a part of it for me, so.
Yeah. Well, let's go on to coaching. You have coached multiple NCAA All-Americans. You coached Columbia University's Jeff Spear, the 2008 NCAA Men's Sabre National Champion and 2012 London Games Olympian. You've also coached Daria Schneider, the 2007 NCAA Women's Sabre National Champion, and two-time team bronze medalist at the World Championships. You've coached college teams at Tufts and Wellesley as well. So how did you make that transition from competing to coaching?
Well, I was still actively competing actually when I first started teaching, and I was really lucky. Boston Fencing Club at the time was doing outreach into the communities, and they approached me and asked if I would teach some classes in Brookline. And I started teaching the after-school program, and that's where I found Daria when she was very, very young. And I started coaching her, and then myself and David Blake started to coach in rent space at rec programs to coach a small program in Concord. And from that program came Eva Jellison and a number of other students who went on to colleges to compete. So I was competing at the time. I was teaching these after-school programs and just doing a very small amount of coaching. And I was so lucky because that first crop of kids that came in had so much talent, you know, and I was, taking the lessons that I had gotten and kind of giving it back to them.
Yeah, okay.
And, taking lessons that I had seen coaches give and trying to take what I learned on strip and tried to give it to them. So, that early time really was about, figuring out what do I give to them? How do I give these lessons? And I was really lucky because that first group of kids was able to take that information and do extremely well on strip. I mean, Eva went on to be an All-American collegiately and having some incredible national results on her own. She was a remarkable student. Daria obviously went on to have an extremely long competitive career, and there were multiple others from that group who went on to fence in college and do quite well. So again, in the beginning, I think it was just piecing together what I had learned, what I was seeing, what I thought was changing in the sport.
Traditionally, sabre coaches are men. Did you have any pushback from people because you're a woman and here you were trying to coach this masculine sport?
I got a lot less pushback from trying to coach than I did trying to referee.
We'll get to that in a little bit.
but part of that I think was because people were like, "Oh, there's that little girl. How cute." I mean, they didn't expect me to do anything, so nobody thought to push back. Like,
no threat.
I was such an anomaly, and I couldn't possibly be a threat.
Yeah.
And also, some people were very remarkable in that process because Yuri, who I had been going to his summer camps for years as an athlete, allowed me to come and help out and learn to coach and watch him give lessons and film. So some of the people were quite remarkable and generous with their time and willingness to let me watch and absorb things. Arkady Burdon, Ed, these guys never hesitated to let me watch. And yes, I do think there's a component of, well, she's not a threat. It's fine.
Yeah.
But still, their willingness to share information with me was remarkable and helpful and incredible on their part. And I owe everything. Yuri drives him crazy because I identify him as one of my coaches, even though he never gave me a physical lesson. Because I took his classes and because he shared coaching information with me. So even though Yuri's like, "Oh, you're not my student," I still identify him as one of my coaches because without him, I wouldn't have been able to do any of the lessons I did, nor compete the way I did.
Do you think a good coach needs to have been a good competitor? And can someone coach without extensive competitive experience, him or herself?
That's two different answers.
Okay.
I think you have to have fenced. I think you have to have competed. I think you have to have competed quite a bit. I don't think you have to have been successful at it. A modicum of skill, sure. But do you have to be an Olympian or a world champion to coach well? No, absolutely not. I actually think my refereeing has contributed to my success as a coach in some ways more than my fencing past. Because I have been able to go to every World Cup for a 10-year span and watch coaches warm-up lessons and watch the athletes compete and watch how the referees are calling things and watch the evolution of the sport. So being able to sit down and take in that information has been extremely helpful for me. The fact that I wasn't a good athlete, that I had to win by thinking about the tactics of the sport, that's impacted my coaching immensely because I couldn't rely on just being good or muscle memory. I had to rely on thinking about the sport. So if you understand fencing and you understand refereeing and you understand what is happening in a lesson in front of you, that's really how you can improve your coaching and bring new things to the table for your students. I watched Yuri. He would watch the fencing and make stuff up to solve problems and create new ways to win. And I watched Ed Corfanti do the same thing. These guys are incredibly creative. They rely on a technical background. They obviously have a firm background in traditional fencing, but at the same time, they're able to take from modern fencing and give to their students a way to win, a way to solve problems, a way to be creative. And I think that that's remarkable. And I think that watching fencing and understanding fencing really contributes to being a good coach. And I don't think it's always necessarily the Olympian that brings that to the table. Sometimes it's someone who was a good fencer, a passionate fencer, a competitive fencer, but who wasn't elite.
I've seen you with your students, and you have a really good rapport with them. And when you come and do camps at our club, it's like everybody is your best friend, and they love you, even if they've only met you for the first time. How does a coach build a good rapport like that with their students?
I am going to actually just tell you what Daria said to me when she decided to come back to me as her coach for the last Olympic quad. She said, "Ariana, I have always known for every minute of my time with you as a coach that you believed in me 100%. And I try to make my students understand that I have their back, that I believe in them, that I believe in their ability to succeed. And I don't mean that I believe that every one of my students is going to become an Olympic champion. I believe in their ability to succeed at whatever level they're at. So if I have a student who, isn't gifted athletically and isn't someone inclined to understand fencing immediately, then I want them to succeed exactly as they are and get joy of fencing, and they know it. I try to give my all to every student in front of me, even if they're not the student who's necessarily going to become the next national team member, and to give them something they can practice, something they can take away. And so I think if your students know you believe in them, if you know that you want them to succeed at any level, that really builds mutual trust and respect.
That's really great. That's really great. And if, I'm not asking you to reveal any major secrets here, but what's your general coaching style? You had such a mishmash of training, it sounds like. So.
Absolutely. But, again, the person who impacted my coaching style the most was Yuri, because he so often let me sit and watch his lessons. I believe in doing things slowly and correctly rather than fast and wrong, because I think on strip the adrenaline will make you fast. And in the beginning I want you to do things slowly and correctly. I talk a lot about tactics and trying to go to bring to each lesson ideas that people can take away, actions that work well with one another. And not trying to rush through that material, trying to do it correctly and slowly and then speed up as time allows, so that people really can come to the strip with good sense of technique and a good sense of tactics. And I think people learn a lot from each other out on strip. So if they are fencing other people with a good sense of tactics and speed and strategy, they start to bring those lessons out to the strip.
Well, I remember going to my first out-of-state camp. It was at your camp, actually, and everything was done in slow motion. And I remembered thinking to myself, how is this going to help me be a better fencer? Because it's not, as an older fencer myself, I'm always worried about being too slow. And here was something that you were telling me to do that was making me slow. And I'll be damned if it didn't work, because, if you're right, if you build that muscle memory and you do it correctly every time, then it really does help. So
Yeah, speed follows, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not by any stretch alleging that Yuri always gives slow lessons, because certainly I've seen him give extremely fast, dynamic lessons to his elite level students, but it's after they learned everything perfectly.
Right.
And they learned the idea and the tactics, and then it got fast and dynamic, so there's a progression. And I always liked the fact that Yuri was creative and brought new ideas and things. I have one story, and I asked once his students, I said, when Yuri goes to a World Cup and brings back a new idea and changes it, does he tell you he's about to change it? And his student laughed at me and said, oh no, I'll do something that I've been doing in lessons for 6 months, and then he'll yell at me for doing it wrong.
sounds like a coach.
Because he changed his idea, and now I'm learning the new thing.
Yeah.
I always thought that was kind of funny. I do try to tell my students, okay, I've gone to a World Cup and now I'm changing something because I think this is now the way things are going. But I did think it was kind of cute that he would come back with a new idea and be like, what are you doing? That's crazy. Stop that.
Who taught you defense like that? All right. Well, let's move on to that third hat that you wear in the fencing world, refereeing, the one that has proven most challenging, perhaps in many respects, and perhaps most rewarding, refereeing. You were the first, I believe, American female sabre ref that the U.S. sent to a World Cup. So what can you tell us about that first competition where you were our representative?
Well, Daniel Costin was the coach on that trip, and he went with the team about half an hour before I did to the venue, and the gentleman running the tournament said, okay, where's Mr. Klinkov? And Daniel smiled and said, it's Mrs. Klinkov, and they laughed. They were like, haha, that's funny. What a good joke.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and Daniel nodded and went on his merry way. And I showed up, and there was quite a stir at my presence because I was, in fact, Mrs. Klinkov. And when I was assigned to referee my first pool, the entire room full of coaches and administrators lined up behind me to watch.
Oh my goodness,
Yeah,
the whole venue?
Oh yeah, pretty much.
Oh my goodness.
With the exception of the fencers who were on their own strips and the
Although
other
they would have
referees.
been there too if
yes.
they could have.
So, yeah, it was pretty interesting to them. And I really have to give the people who ran that tournament some credit because I did a very good job in the pool and I did perfectly well in my first 2 DEs. And in my third DE, one of the coaches decided to see if he could break me. And this is not uncommon in refereeing, even if you're a guy. And he quite succeeded. By the end of this bout, I was sweating and I probably couldn't have seen anything, never mind the fencing that was occurring in front of me. Because he was just right behind my back, like making comments. And the funny part is I became very close friends with this particular coach later. But so the administrator kind of saw this play out. He pulled me out for a bout or two, and then he put me back in the finals, and I did great. I ended up refereeing the final 8 and the final 4, I believe. So I got to do finals my first time out, and
Which is unusual.
Yeah, and it was wonderful. I refereed some people who went on to be really amazing champions later on. But that was very smart. Like he saw this happen, decided it really wasn't my refereeing. It was about that moment on strip. Gave me a break and then sent me right back out, and it was
Which sent a good message.
Yeah. So that was I give a lot of credit to them. But I learned a lot there because I learned that a coach that gets in your ear can make or break your day, and I worked very hard to develop ways to talk to coaches to move them out of my hearing so that I could ignore them. Because it's really about you doing the best job for the fencers. And though I completely respect that the coaches are there to coach and I want them to do their job, they also can't make your day miserable.
Right.
And so, that was a good learning for me.
And at the time that you were refereeing, did you see any other women referees there? Even
not
for the other
in
weapons?
sabre.
Yeah.
Not in sabre. I mean, there were maybe 1 or 2 other women certainly refereeing in épée and foil, but at the time I was it for sabre.
Wow, like in the whole world,
Yes.
basically. Wow.
There were one or two people trying to referee in the U.S. who had been fencers, but they were still refereeing only at the domestic level and
Okay.
had not tested at all to go out internationally. So,
Wow. Is there a particular bout from your refereeing experience that sticks in your mind?
it's funny. There are tons of bouts that stick out in my mind. I mean, the year after Aldo Montano decided to run off strip and jump on a referee, I think I refereed all of his bouts for 2 World Cups after that. I'm not sure whether they just figured he wouldn't attack me
jump on you
because I was a girl, but I refereed the World Championship gold medal match in 2012 between the Ukraine and Russia, which was amazing. That was an amazing experience for me, and certainly something I never thought I would end up as the first woman to referee. I didn't ever think I would referee a World Championship gold, but I did. There were amazing experiences being a referee and watching referees at many junior and cadet world championships and Grand Prix events, all of which were unbelievable. I will tell you this story just because I know you want to hear it, but one of the cute, funny moments that you're trying to break things up, I was refereeing Aldo Montano and somebody else, and
He happens to be a personal favorite.
Yes, and he was kind of playing around on strip a bit, so I looked at him and I pulled the hair tie out of my hair and I walked up to him and I said, "You need to put your hair up off your lame." And he looked at me and he was like, I'm like, "Your hair is on your lame." So I made him actually put up his hair with my hair tie. So that was kind of cute, but in a moment to kind of establish control in a way that was not aggressive, really.
Yeah.
And obviously the bout that everybody knows about and that sticks out the most is when I refereed my first Grand Prix final ever in Las Vegas, and it was 14-14, and
Who were the fencers?
Pena from Spain and also Aldo Montano.
Okay, he's in a lot of your stories.
Pena flunged, and then all of a sudden Aldo Montano was on the floor. And I turned around to my video referee, because you have to, it's 14-14, and I said, do you think he punched him in the mask? And my video referee said, "I don't know," and turned around and refused to talk to me. And the head of arbitrage at the time was kind of jumping up and down going, "What's the card? What's the card?" And there I am pretty much alone, because my video referee won't talk to me. The head of arbitrage is jumping up and down. We keep looking at the video. From my video angle, at some point in the action, it sort of looked like the blades might have had contact. So in a desperate maneuver not to end the bout on a red card, I called parry riposte for Aldo Montano. There was no parry. There was no parry anywhere in the room, never mind in that bout. But so everybody was somewhat perplexed. The bout ended. Ultimately, what should have happened, having seen video angle from a totally different place in the room later, is I should have given a red card to the left, and Montano would have won anyway.
Right. But it didn't change the outcome.
No, it didn't change the outcome, but it was decidedly not the right call. So, and I was saved miraculously when in the final, Aldo was up 14-9 and lost.
Oh my!
In this incredible comeback to the Chinese fencer, who later, I believe, won the Olympics. But he, had this. There was this incredible comeback in the final, so everyone forgot about me. So that was quite nice. Yeah, exactly. So no one was talking about me at the end of the day. That was great. And you know what? The moral of the story is I made this ridiculous and high-profile mistake and still went on to have a fairly successful refereeing career. I did other world championships, and and Pan American Games and everything. So I think that people need to understand that mistakes happen, and you can move on. Yeah.
Well, tell me a little bit about the mentoring that you do for referees now.
I have been really lucky that U.S. Fencing is letting me do some assigning at some of the NACs, and over the years I've helped educate and help referees come up in the New England area, and a lot of them, I'm very proud of them. A lot of those people who've come up in New England and are now refereeing at World Cups and refereeing at NACs and finals, and they're doing an incredible job. Kenneth Shanahan is one of those people. Laura Decker, who's now refereeing our Grand Prix list, is someone who I've hopefully have helped out come up over the years. And So in my assigning, I try to give people chances. I try to give them bouts that might be hard, to give them good people on video to help them navigate that, to, go out there and try to give feedback and help people, learn and be better and tackle whatever challenges they have as referees. I really want the U.S. to have a strong sabre core of referees, and I want us to give opportunities to people who have some talent but might otherwise be overlooked. So
Very good. Very good. Okay, now I'm almost afraid to ask you about this. It's your favorite activity outside of fencing. It's CrossFit. And as everybody knows, once a CrossFitter starts talking about CrossFit, then that's it. Okay, so that's why I left this for last. Okay, so what got you into CrossFit?
Well, it's funny. CrossFit is really fun for me because it gives me a goal and something to learn without any pressure. I hated not having a competitive sport, and I knew I couldn't fence for everything we talked about earlier. So,
Right.
And one day I was at the gym, and I've always worked out. Even when I stopped fencing, I was still working out. I was at the gym, and I did this cardio workout, and I was sucking wind so badly, and I looked in the mirror, and I went, oh no, this is not happening. This is terrible. It was a high intensity interval training class. So I took those classes for about a month, and then I went to CrossFit. And first day, I'm learning how to do all these Olympic lifts that I had no idea how to do. And I was like, here it is. Here's this sport where I can learn all those fun things to practice that I used to love from fencing. It's not, doing step aerobics or sitting on a treadmill endlessly. This is a skill. There's skills here. And there are coaches who want to teach you those skills. I was so excited. And so, like everything else, I threw myself into it exactly like I did with fencing, and I do it 5 days a week, and I'm not great at it because I'm not a great athlete, but I get better at the Olympic lifts every day, and I can do pull-ups now.
I'm so jealous of that, I have to say.
I can do toes to bar now, and I can do snatches and clean and jerks, and I'm hopefully will continue to get better at it. But that's the thing I love about CrossFit is that people want to teach you a new skill, and you can get better at that new skill every day. I mean, I started out lifting 55 pounds in a clean and jerk, and I can do 120 pounds now, It's measurable, it's great. And, I've gone to some CrossFit competitions, and I can be totally last, and nobody cares. No one knows who I am. They don't expect me to win.
Right.
It's
no pressure.
just fun. Yeah, I can just I can work for myself, and so that's what I really like, is that it gives me a venue to be better and to practice new stuff and to compete when I want to, and it's okay to be doing that at my own pace.
Well, and you found the same camaraderie that you did when you started fencing.
Absolutely.
Because you've told me stories about the different boxes you've gone to and how each has its own little culture. And the majority of the ones that you've told me about have been very friendly and very welcoming. And actually, you've got one here in town.
Oh, I love them.
Yeah, they remember you because you visit them every time you come.
Yeah, I walk in and they're like, Ariana, it's so nice to see you. Come in, do the WOD. It's great. And that is, I'm very excited about Salt Lake City this summer because the box that's near our U.S. Nationals is run by one of the most elite CrossFitters in the country, Tommy Hackenbrook. And last time I went there, he looked at me and he's like, come on in. Your box would let me in for free, so you just come in and work out. Like, who
That's
does
great.
that, So they're just amazing. And looking at these amazing athletes work out and being able to work among them, it's pretty great, so.
Do you have a favorite box that you visited?
I have lots of favorite boxes, actually, and for very different reasons. Chris Spieler's box up in Park City, Utah is incredible. Their coaching staff is really remarkable, and every time I go there, I learn something that makes me a little bit better, so that's great. My home box, CrossFit Reach, there's a coach there, Jim, who is tireless in working with me to make me better, which is pretty great, and he's a wonderful coach and very enthusiastic. The CrossFit gym here, OTS 3, just an incredible family environment and some amazing coaches. I've learned a lot from them actually about coaching, about how little things said in a different way can make you better. It's why I never get nervous about sending my students to another coach for a camp or a couple days, because they're not better, they're different. And that's wonderful, because they may say something I've been saying to my student over and over again, just a little different, and make them better. And that happens in CrossFit every day. So, I think that there are lessons about coaching to be learned in each environment. And that's also one of the reasons I love CrossFit.
That's great. That's great. Okay, we're going to finish up this interview with a mixture of famous questions from James Lipton and Marcel Proust. The reason I want to finish with these is I went to France for a couple of years, and I actually heard the original guy that came up with these questions do this on his show. His name was Bernard Pivot, and he was on Bouillon de Culture. And so when I heard James Lipton do these on the Actors Studio, I just went crazy. France really changed my life, and I always loved hearing people's answers to these questions. So I'm going to subject them to you.
Oh,
I'm going to subject you to them as well. Okay. I had to change a couple of them because I can't ask you what your favorite curse word is. Just because.
Oh, come on!
Yeah. But most of these are intact. So here's the first one. What is your favorite word?
I don't think I have a favorite word, but if it was, it would be to persevere.
Okay.
Or stubborn. Stubborn and persevere. They those two words, they have a special life, a special love for them.
What is your least favorite word?
It's two though. Give up.
What sound or noise do you love?
I absolutely love the peepers at night in the fall, just when you're ending summer and it's the dusk and you hear the little peepers. I love that sound. It's great.
What sound or noise do you hate?
I don't know, but I really don't like the nails on the chalkboard thing very much.
I
That's
agree
awful. Oh, and you know those like styrofoam things when styrofoam runs together?
Yeah,
that also, god awful.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I think if I wasn't a fencing coach, I would be a doctor. I think I would be a doctor.
Okay. And what profession would you not like to do?
I would very strongly not like to be a toll booth collector.
Oh, yeah, that'd be really boring.
Awful.
Yeah.
That's like my job antithesis. I would rather collect trash than do that.
At least you'd be active.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Totally fine.
Where would you like to live?
There's so many places I would love to live. In my travels as a referee, I've seen some incredible places, but Orléans, France, I love that town. I absolutely adore it. I could also live in Park City, Utah.
Okay. What do you value most in your friends?
That they call me sometimes. I mean, honestly, like I have a crazy travel schedule and and I know that I have to reach out to my friends a lot, but friends who will just call me at random and be like, how are you? How's it going? Those friends who you can be apart from forever and just have this wonderful conversation and comfort the minute you get back to them. And I have a few of them scattered around the country and the globe, and it's great. That comfortableness.
Who is your hero?
I don't have a hero, and here's why. I have people who I think are amazing, but in every single one of those people who I know are amazing, I know that they are flawed, and I know that there are things that are probably terrible, like we all have. So I hope that I can just admire the brilliant things in lots of people and accept their flaws and know they're there and hope we can all work to change them.
And the last one, what is your motto?
Oh, I have a great motto. And I'm not even sure if my motto's right, by the way, because I'm quoting somebody, but my thing is from Frank Herbert's Dune. It's there is nothing to fear. Fear is the mind killer. And I believe that is probably one of the most important things in fencing life and coaching, because so often we kill ourselves just because we are afraid. And if we can learn to conquer the fear of loss, the fear of failure, the fear of the other person, we can accomplish anything, anywhere, whether it's on strip, in the CrossFit gym, or in life.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. It's always fun to sit and talk to you, whether on tape or not.
A huge thank you to Tony Escueda, who created all the music for this podcast. He is a longtime friend, he is a saber fencer at the Fencing Institute of Texas, and he's a bigwig at Yamaha. He has given me tons of advice on how to put this project together. And in fact, just today, he sent me a couple of links on how to properly use GarageBand. As he continues teaching me about mixing software, I expect the quality of these podcasts to get better and better. Also, thanks to my husband, David, for encouraging me to take on this project and for helping me do the sound engineering on this recording. Finally, thanks to all of you out there who are listening to this podcast. Any ideas for subject matter or people to interview can be sent to sabercoachkate@gmail.com. If you haven't discovered my blog yet, please visit sabercoachkate.wordpress.com. A new interview will be available every Thursday, so tune in next week.